Hi everyone, welcome. Liosam Chanayavu, Kachimalaya, Monitabote Amibani Hanewi, Inapo Valentin Sierra Inapo Nueme. Greetings everyone. My name is Val Sierra. I am Yaqui, or also known as the Yoeme people. I am currently a sixth-year doctoral candidate here at UC Berkeley in the Graduate School of Social Welfare. I also serve as a graduate fellow here at the Joseph A. Meyer Center for Research on Native American Issues in the Institute for the Study of Social Issues. I also hang out here a lot at the Native Community Center, sponsored by Native American Student Development Office. That's kind of where we're live streaming from today. I'm really excited to welcome you all here online and in person. We have a really wonderful event today. Before we begin, I want to ask that you turn off or mute your cell phones, just out of respect. I also want to take some time to do a land acknowledgement. I want to start by acknowledging that UC Berkeley sits on the territory of Uchun, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chochenyo Ohlone people. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Ohlone people. We recognize that every member of the Berkeley community has benefited and continues to benefit from the use and occupation of this land since the institution's founding in 1868. Consistent with the university values of community and diversity, we have a responsibility to acknowledge and make visible the university's relationship to Native peoples. By offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm Indigenous sovereignty and our commitment to hold the university more accountable to the needs of American Indian and Indigenous peoples. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's event, which is sponsored by the Joseph A. Meyer Center for Research on Native American Issues and the Native American Student Development Office. I also want to do a quick plug for another event that we're having next week, sponsored through the Joe Meyer Center at NASD. We'll be having Professor Sarah Deer talk about the recent Supreme Court case involving the Indian Child Welfare Act. That will be on Thursday at 5:30 on Zoom. We have some flyers here somewhere. For those of you that are on Zoom, you should see the info in the chat. So for today's event, we are joined by Sandy Whitehawk, who will speak for 45 minutes, followed by a Q&A. For those of you that are joining via Zoom, please use the Q&A feature to write in your questions, and I will ask those on your behalf. After the event, please join us on the patio on the side for some snacks, informal discussion, and a book signing. We appreciate having Eastwind Books here and for selling copies of Sandy's book. With that, it's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Sandy Whitehawk, the founder and director of First Nations Repatriation Institute. Sandy has become a spokesperson on the issue of adoption and the foster care system and how it has impacted First Nations people. Among her many roles in this work, she is the director of the Healing Program at the National Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition in Minneapolis. Today, she is going to talk about child removal in her book, A Child of the Indian Race, A Story of Return, which tells her story. Please join me in welcoming Sandy Whitehawk.
That's another thing. I always mess these up too. It's not hard to do. Okay, I have to get acclimated. Can you guys hear me? Is this working? You gotta put it really close to your mouth.
Turn on.
Oh, turn it on. Oh, first things first, huh? Oh, the green light. There, now you guys can hear me. Now, didn't I just get through telling you guys I could do 3 things? There you go. I've been only doing this for 20 years and I still go, what, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Well, thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you very much for inviting me here to your campus. It's a beautiful campus. I didn't expect it. For real, I did not know that there would be big trees, and I could actually hear the tree frogs last night, because I associate California with every green space filled up by a building or something, and that there isn't anything left, and its population is so high. So I was pleasantly surprised, Those trees are amazing, those old trees on the way back up to the, what's it called? Faculty Hotel where I'm staying. So since we have such a small group of people, I would like to know who you are and where you're from and what your major is.
I'm very shy.
And sometimes I just want to know, wow, what drew you to come and hear my story, my experience? And it's really not just mine. It's the experience of our people. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of us that have been impacted by adoption and foster care. But so anyway, my name is Sandy Whitehawk. Lakota mia chokata na jiwia. Si changu Lakota he mataha. Wablene chavo pakta bluhavani. I said that I'm from Rosebud by saying I'm Sichangu Lakota, people of the burnt thigh. That's Rosebud, South Dakota. And that my Indian name is Chukatana Jiwia, stands in the center woman. And I explain in my book how I received that name, because it wasn't something that I went, oh, wow, I got an awesome name. I felt like, stands in the center woman. Ooh, I'm exceptionally shy. I used to be exceptionally shy. And that name has helped me not be so shy, but you got to read the book. It's only not even $20, man. So anyway, I teased my editor when I was finally done and got it all done. They gave me the price. I said, what? I rewrote and rewrote and rewrote, and it's only worth $20. But I'm really glad that it is, because 20 is, you can rationalize $20 out of your budget. 40 and 50 is a bit much. And greetings to all of the Cyber Zoom people. Thank you for tuning in. And I'm going to talk today. A lot of this is in the book. It's the shortened version of the book. It's also a way for me to let you know how the work started, where we were at historically, and why we're in the position that we are in today in Indian child welfare. So here are two of our very influential people in my life. The man on the left is Joe Bush. Unfortunately, he's not with us anymore. He's on the other realm, but he was an amazingly encouraging individual for us to begin the work of bringing our relatives home who have been separated through adoption and foster care. And Jerry Dearly on the right, who is the man who made the song, who and still works with me in helping us continue the work. So I pushed it. Huh?
Okay. Try it.
Maybe I'll just have you do it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, you drive.
Okay.
All right, next. So I framed this in Truth, Healing, Reconciliation, and the book is in 3 parts as well. Truth, Healing, Reconciliation. Hit next. So I talk about boarding school as the first systematic removal of our children, and it's actually the first child welfare policy. They didn't say it was a child welfare policy, but it certainly was, because it was one that affected all of our children, not just children from certain regions. It was everybody got carted off to boarding school. Next. And there's a huge impact it had on our individuals. I frame it around individual, family, community, and our nations. So the 4 things that I put up here are just, we could speak for hours about each category. But here's what I want you to think about the most is if you, as it relates to child welfare, when we hear the experiences of boarding school survivors, I hear untreated traumatic brain injuries. I hear sexual violations over and over. I hear berating and bullying and beating, corporal punishment. My brother talked about what they call the hotline, which is basically a gauntlet of people lined up on either side, and you would have to run through it, and then they would get hit by each person. And if you didn't hit the individual, you had to go through the gauntlet. So what would that do to someone's development from age 7 to age 14 to 17, which is the average age of exiting boarding school? And that was their experience, day in, day out, day in, day out, year after year. So they never got to see families be families. They never held newborn babies. They didn't know how to protect. They didn't know anything other than survival. So survival behavior is not always very healthy. But they did it what every other human wants to do when they got out of school. They wanted to find a partner, and they got together, they had children, and didn't know how to take care of their children. Do you know that we are the only species that does not innately know how to keep our babies alive? We have to learn that. That's why there's all the baby books and all the seminars on babying and everything else, because if we were as they were, we don't know. Bears, worms, snakes, fish, everybody knows how to keep their babies alive. And some of them is a lot of attention, and some of it's minimal, but still there's something in the baby that knows how to survive. But our babies are completely dependent on us to survive and to live. So the reason I'm focusing on that is we're still seeing that effect in families and communities today. It's not that we don't love our children. It's not that we don't want to be the way we are. There's things passed down. And if anybody in here or listening has been through a similar situation and maybe an abusive upbringing, and you didn't have that knowledge of how to nurture and take care of, you could have fallen in the same thing. And so we're judged for our parenting, what they see still. So I would need to find another picture, because boarding school survivors look like me in my age group. And they were still brutal during those years of the 50s and 60s and into the 70s. So more and more we're educating our community members so that things can change and be different. But the reason I'm bringing it up is we're misjudged then as a people who don't care, don't know how to care. And yet we're people who deeply care. We were wonderful parents prior to disruption. So it also may seem that parents have apathy toward children. That I tell social workers, I said, yeah, it's the mother and father just looking at you and like, whatever, it's not that they're not interested or don't love their children. They don't know how. They're still experiencing what has happened to their parents or grandparents. They're descendants of that not being able to connect. So each area of our being has been disrupted in some way by boarding school. And I could spend a lot more time on that, but I want you to understand that this was the beginning of, this was the first disruption and had this generational impact, so much so that we are still healing from that impact. And it's 2023, and yet we're still healing from that. We still have people like my brother who went to boarding school and experienced what I described to you in just a very light experience. It was much deeper and more brutal than that on the regular. So next. Ta-da, there it is again, next. So the second systematic removal is the adoption and foster care. And I put 1978 only because that's when the Indian Child Welfare Act was passed, but it's still happening today. An Indian child in Minnesota is 22 more times more likely to be removed from their home than a white child. So during this period, though, let's remember, young people were coming out of boarding school, did not know, they were not trained to work, they were institutionalized, remember. So they were never prepared for the skill living that it takes outside. And yet they had children, so they don't know where the soft spot is on the head. Why is that there? We don't know. I mean, think about all the things that you need to know to keep a child healthy and alive, and things that you need to do. We hear stories of individuals whose parents would leave for 3-4 days at a time and go drink and leave the children alone, but that was normal because they were never taken care of or never nurtured. It really works like that. If you grow up in a home where during your development stages, you do what you've been taught. You know, some things you might be able to rise above, but for the most part, there are things that are just going to be there because there are things you can undo, unlearn, but there it is. But this is also a time when the government gave churches money to work through adoption. So much for separation of church and state, but that's what the government does. They change their mind anytime that they feel that's going to benefit them. So in Minnesota, 1 in 4 babies under age 1 were removed, and I've heard elders talk about how there were literally no children in the villages during those years. And Hannahville, Michigan was a project, or not a project. Hannahville, Michigan was a Potawatomi reservation in Michigan. The land was right next to forests, and the parents went into the forest and harvested pulpwood as a way to sustain themselves, leaving the older children with the younger children. Social services knew that this was happening, so they came in and in one day went from one end to the other end of the reservation and took children whose parents were not in the home. I heard firsthand accounts of those individuals who this happened to, and was in the 50s. And there was a elder lady sharing her experience, and she was still crying and saying, why did I open the door? Why did I open the door? And, you know, we were comforting her and telling her, you were 11. And besides, they weren't polite about it. They would have barged in, you know, you just happened to open the door. So they're carrying that legacy of pain and having to deal with that. And that was, all those families were charged with child neglect, and all those children were adopted out into mostly white homes. The Indian Adoption Project was a project between the Child Welfare League of America and the Bureau of Child Welfare League of America and the BIA. I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, that you'll hear about that, but it's a project that only adopted out or facilitated 395 adoptions. But what that project did was set the precedent. So they started training Lutheran social services, Catholic social services, and private adoption agencies, and they literally targeted Native people. So children were getting removed from homes that had no electricity, no running water. And that is so ridiculous. When you think of the people who, especially during those years, didn't have running water and didn't have electricity. The Appalachian Mountains, remember the Appalachia and the stark poverty that was there? Now, how come they didn't want those white babies, those poor white babies? I never can figure that out. They wanted our babies, and I don't know why. Why us? But it was certainly a racist targeting that took place and is still taking place, just in a different form. Next. So what is the impact of being raised away from your family and culture? And I found that it was a lot like those who'd been removed through boarding school. I'll take a sip of coffee. I need a little jump start my brain here. So in boarding school, they didn't have a sense of identity. In fact, one of I think it was Reverend Lippett in Carlisle boarding school, at the graduation speech, he said, let all that is Indian within you die. They really wanted no identity of who we were at all. They said things like savage and civilization cannot live together, one has to die. I mean, they really put all this stuff on us. And I think here's my here's what I think happened. So they kept calling us all these names. And yet we were the ones who did not attack. We were not the ones we were always defending. I think it was the first case of the classic projection. You know, they were savages. They beat children. They molested their children. And then they did that to us and then said that we were that, but it's a, you know, how that phenomenon of projection of what you're, that's what they did completely to us. So anyway, as you look and see, they're very similar outcomes psychologically, emotionally, as those who are separated through adoption or through boarding school. And again, you know, loss of that parental power, that's classic throughout all the things that happen to us. The birth mothers and birth fathers, a lot of shame. A lot of shame about not being able to keep a hold of their children. Next. Next. We already did that one. So there's me. Just, I don't know if it's the day they got me or very close. You look at my face, I don't look like a very happy, I don't look very happy there. But in the book, I explain all the things that I experienced as a child and how that impacted me. And when I, as an adult, when I started healing and putting things together, I really thought I was kind of like the only one. I didn't know. So if you take people completely away from their culture, you know, I didn't know there were 500 and some tribes. I didn't know the state I was living in Wisconsin, that there was 11 tribes there. How would I know that? You know, we don't teach accurate Indian history in education system. So how would I know? All I knew is that I didn't fit in. And when I thought, I used to laugh and say, I used to watch everything around me and I practiced being the best white girl I could think. Yeah, I got it down now. And then somebody would call me a slob. And everyone, you know, to their, I don't want to say to their credit, but yeah, to their credit, they didn't know who I was. And all they knew was what they saw on TV, what they saw in the cartoons and calling me names and doing the woo. I don't even know if they knew how hurtful that was. But at my 50th class reunion, I can't remember if it's 50 or 55. I think it's 50th class reunion. By then, my documentary had come out and a lot of them had seen it. And several people apologized to me. And I was really surprised. And it felt good, you know, because sometimes people that are speaking racist things and are doing racist things aren't really racist. They're doing that learned behavior from their family and whatever. And so you have to explore it and find out. But then when my book came out, I got emails from classmates going, was I one of the people who did that? Because they couldn't remember. And so it's been interesting to have the reaction from those who knew me then. And and then a 90-year-old neighbor of ours contacted me. He says, I read your book, Sandy. I wish I would have known what was happening, because I would like to think I would have made a phone call and helped. And I said, well, you just did. I thought it was pretty amazing. So yeah, because when you're in that isolation, when you're getting abused, you know, there's an emotional isolation that takes place and nobody else knows it's happening, right? And to have her say that, just really something. A real blessing. Anyway, next. So healing. Next. So for me, after I went home for the first time, it was 1988, so I was 35 years old. And You have to get the books. Can't tell you now. Takes too long. It's a mere $20. Did I tell you it's only $20? Anyway, for me, there's a part of me that at the time I didn't even know healing is what I needed. All I knew is that I was 35 years old. I was sober for 7 years. I had just left a really abusive marriage. And all I really knew is I didn't know who I was. And I learned how not to drink or do any drugs by going to 12-step meetings. That's it. And when I started being around Indian people, they're the ones who would tell me, you know, you need to do this, or I want to take you here, different places, and so that, and they would say, well, what you need to heal from that. And I'm like, heal from what? You know, because I didn't have, I understood, for some reason, I understood the drinking and drugging part. I needed that, but the other part was so vague, because where in the universe have I even talked? I never even talked to anybody like that. So a miracle happened, and I will tell you this, and it is in the book, but right after I had gone home, met the family, come back, now what? So I'm at a 12-step meeting where another brown person had never come in those doors for those 7 years of my going there. No African American, no Hispanic, no Asian, no nothing, just all white, and mostly old white men, which cracks me up that the creator used these old white men to help me. But anyway, because of my prejudice at the time. But anyway, in comes this little brown woman walking across, little because she's shorter than me. She was walking across with someone else. And I thought to myself, wow, she's either Hawaiian, Hispanic, yeah, what is she, you know? And first time seeing one in all the years of being there. And so when it came her turn to talk, she was definitely Indian from the Menominee Reservation, but she had just relapsed. Now, I was really angry at this time too. I forgot to add that part. When I went home, I was like so pissed because I started finding out right away the lies I'd been told about being adopted. That's in the book too. And I was just, I was so mad. And because she had relapsed, I went, okay, cannot talk to her because I'll be on the street with her in no time because I'm pissed. And but she came up to talk to me afterwards and said, my sponsor told me that you're Indian and that you have a lot of sobriety. And I said, well, I don't know if I got a lot of sobriety, but all I know is I come here and I don't drink. That's what I know. And I said, I suppose I could give you a ride now and then. Well, eventually she introduced me. Who knew there was an Indian community in Madison, Wisconsin? If you are disconnected, you are disconnected. You don't know where any brown people are, period. Because typically white people they're not part of a brown community, unless through marriage or something, or friendship. Anyway, so that's where my healing started. And there's a university there, so there are people from all over the country who were also there in that community. That community got together every Friday, or every Sunday night. So I started coming into myself. A lot of awesome things happened, and who knew? Who knew? But somebody asked me along the way, they said, Sandy, what's it like to be going through all this healing process? And I go, yeah, I don't know, because I think it's just eating chili and fry bread and telling stupid jokes. I don't know. That's what it feels like to me, because I'd never experienced that kind of community intimacy. I'd never had that before. All right, next. So flash forward to 1999, and it's been about 10 years, 11 years since I had first gone home to Rosebud. I was walking around at our annual Rosebud Fair, feeling so good and visiting people, talking. It just seemed like there was no junk up in my head. And I understood who I was and where I came from and healing so many aspects. And I was sitting at the powwow with a friend of mine, my brother introduced me to this elder lady, Claire Ferguson. She was just really cool grandma lady. And I said, Claire, I'm going to just sit here and visit you. I thought I was going to dance, but I think I'll just wait till tonight. Blah, blah, blah. We're just talking away. And she's telling me different things about being a young woman. She was telling me what being at a 49 was. And that is like the after party for Indian people. And she goes, these kids today don't know how to 49. We 49 did. She told me all this stuff that she did as a young woman. It was just a lot of fun. And then it was just about the end of that session. So that dance sessions usually go like from 1 to 5 and 7 to 10-ish. And I said, oh, Clara, we're going to eat pretty quick. I said, I teased her and said, I love taking care of elders because I can get a plate for myself. And we were teasing about that. And we're sitting there and it was just a beautiful time. And I said, ooh, the guy came up with the microphone. I'm like, oh, this is it, they're going to break. Because we were hungry, really hungry. And he says, well, before supper, we're going to have a special. And you could almost hear the moan because that means it could mean 2 hours. It could be who knows, right? Because they're going to give a special for this Korean War veteran. The family started bringing out all their giveaway stuff, and I'm like, oh my God, that's going to take forever to give away. And they started their honor song, and that elder man who is like I said, a Korean War veteran, they started naming off things he's done in the community, and just he's been a pretty cool dude, right? And he's just walking around that arena with his woman like this, and our arena's huge. And I thought, oh my God, he's gonna take him an hour just to get around the arena one time. So I was really thinking, good healing thoughts. I'm all just so centered. Look at it, Claire. I was like, man, when are we going to get to eat? She goes, I know. When are we gonna get Anyway, all of a sudden, when they started coming in front of us, I started thinking, wow, how cool is this that they're talking about him while he's still here? You know, a lot of times they do this after the person's passed. They get up and they tell all these stories. Here they were talking about him, and I'm like, wow, how awesome is that? And then I realized, once I shut up and listened, the song that was being sung was beautiful. It sounded really old. And I said, Clara, what are they saying in this song? And she said, started telling me, and she said, they're saying, thank you for what you did for us. This is an old veteran song, and it's acknowledging how veterans sometimes pay with their life. And she said, and then I looked over, and here he was with his companion, and there were these honor beats that would come in this song, and they'd raise their hands. And when they were doing that, I just felt something, and I said, well, Clara, what's, you know, I powwow, but I powwow dance over in Wisconsin, and they don't do this here. So what's this? Because every tribe does things a little differently. And she goes, well, because the song is saying, we acknowledge, you know, we acknowledge you, we thank you for what you've done. And when they hit those honor beats, that's a way of saying that, you know, in agreement and acknowledgement of that life. And as they sang a little more, she goes, now they're acknowledging and thinking about those veterans who are making, are giving their time, they're away from us, they're serving their time, and we're thinking of them, and we're saying, thank you for what you're doing for us. And another round of honor beats comes and says, and she said, now we're acknowledging those veterans who are starting to make their way home, their duty is done, and they're making their way back, and we're holding, and we're thinking, welcome home, we're really glad you're back. I remember thinking, whoa, I've never heard that in relating to adoptees. And just then I turn and I see that couple, and it was like, you guys know what backlighting is? Like there's a certain time of night when the sun is setting, that backlighting hits and it just pops. So it was golden and beautiful. And for just a few seconds, it felt like nothing bad had ever happened to us ever. And it was just this strength and this beauty. And I was just blown away. I was like, oh my gosh. And she said, get out there and dance because you're supposed to go out and shake the person's hand that there's a special for. She goes, you're a veteran, get out there. So I reluctantly go out there because I was just mesmerized what I was seeing. And I kept thinking, I wonder why we don't do this for our relatives who are making their way back. And how come we're not acknowledging our birth parents and our grandparents who lost us, and some of the time, some of us reunited, some of us didn't, and that stayed with me. But anyway, the song finally got over, and I quickly ran over and got me and Clara our fried bread and soup. And that just was in August of '99. Flash forward to March of 2000, and I had met this elder, Chris Lee. He's in the book. And I was in Costa Rica, and I had been invited to go to World Peace and Prayer Day and to dance. And so that was a vision that Arvo Looking Horse had, and he began going across the four directions, taking this message of global healing and world peace. And I was still really cynical at that time. And I remember thinking, world peace, what are we, pageant people now? Or what's the scoop? You know, because that's what they always say. And world peace. Well, anyway, I was really amazed at how this vision was very real and very powerful, and how people came together, the indigenous people there in Costa Rica. And I meet this man, Chris Lee. But before everything started, everybody goes, where's Chris Leith? Is he here yet? And there seemed to be this incredible respect that they had for him. Well, I didn't know that I was going to spend the next 7 years on the road with Chris Leith at the time, but I remember meeting him and thinking, wow, he's pretty awesome. Very quiet man with a very strong spiritual belief, and really believed in healing. So I had him come and speak to our students where I was working at the time. And I didn't mean to tell him what I just told you guys about the special and my thoughts and stuff, but he just goes, what'd you do this summer? Did you go to, this last summer, did you go home? And I go, yeah. Did you go to the powwow, or what'd you do? And then somehow I just told him. But as I was telling him, I thought, oh my God, I should not be telling this incredible spiritual leader, babbling on about, you know, and then I thought this, and then I thought that. You know, and so I just wanted to take those words and put them back in my mouth and go, let's fast forward to something. And he's just listening really intently. And I go, and why don't we have a song for that? We have a song for everything. We got horse stealing songs, we got veteran songs, we got somebody graduated from college, we got that song, we got all kinds of songs. If we don't have that song, we make that song. And he just looks at me and goes, you know, you're right. You're right, there should be a song. I'll make sure there's a song. I'll ask Jerry Dearly to make a song. You know, I'm the spiritual advisor to the National Indian Child Welfare Association. And I go, what's that? And he goes, well, you got a lot of learning to do, girl, because you got to get to that conference too. 2000, I mean, just went bam. And he says, I think you found your purpose in life. And I said to myself, not to him, I got smart enough not to smart off in front of elders, but in my head, I thought, you don't even know me, old man. I am not on welfare anymore. I'm working at a college where I have money left over from my check. And I'm working with students that can't get any better. And I had, but within 5 months, I was on the road with him. And I'd left the college because I got sick and had to take a permanent medical leave, but that condition did not keep me from being able to travel some, and as long as I rested and whatnot. So anyway, that's how it all started. Next. So as we were going, he wanted us to go to different tribes, different communities, and talk about this. And the more adoptees I met, I started realizing there were all these similarities. And there's some right here. Next. And I started realizing that there was a lot of trauma, that we had a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety. A lot of them were on medication. it just, I was really blown away at how I could pretty much guess what they're going to feel like. And and so many of them had gone through abuse like myself. And I thought, well, how's that? But it is what it is. So started seeing that. So next, you've probably heard the term historical trauma. We have Dr. Yellowhorse Braveheart to thank for that. But there's another component of historical trauma that I do not hear us talking enough about, which is next. Disenfranchised grief, a grief that's not been acknowledged publicly, it's not been validated. It's one you carry around, everybody knows, it could even be everyone knows about it. So I was realizing that there was all this grief around birth relatives and adoptees and fostered individuals, but nobody was talking about it publicly. And why weren't we? And how do we talk about it in a way that facilitates healing? So Chris was really the person to talk with us about being an elder and having worked in ICWA as well. Next. So we had been invited to Fort Thompson to speak to an elder group. And I started thinking to myself, hey, what if we used individuals who've been through foster care and through adoption and people who had had their children taken from them. We always say they were relinquished. Were they relinquished? I don't think so. From what stories I hear, it was not like agreed upon or whatever. But and what if we called this a truth and reconciliation time? And at that time in 2005, I had no idea where I heard truth and reconciliation. I just was there. I know I didn't make it up. I heard it somewhere, but I can't tell you when I wedded it together. But I was saying, we need to be speaking our truth. And this grandma spoke up and she said, well, I don't think you should talk about truth and reconciliation without including healing. Because if you don't have healing time, no reconciliation takes place. And then why did you even say all that had happened, the truth? And she said that in South Dakota in '99, Governor Rounds made that year the year of reconciliation to improve relationships with the tribe and the South Dakota government. She goes, yeah, well, no, nobody came to our community to hear what happened to us. So no healing took place, so no reconciliation took place. So that stayed with me about the healing aspect, and talked it over with Chris, and that became an integral part of when we bring people together, a time of healing as well. So next. So reconciliation, what is reconciliation? I knew this was going to like take off and people really get into reconciliation and have no idea what the heck it means. And even in our communities, a lot of people don't like the word reconciliation because they say, well, if you were getting reconciled, doesn't it mean we were reconciled at some point and now we're going to try to get reconciled? And how can you reconcile genocide? Because of all the genocidal practices that happened toward us, how are we reconciling that? Next. So after having several truth healing reconciliations, process started coming to me. And so this is like a skeleton outline of what a day of truth healing reconciliation on adoption and foster care would look like. But the part that's exceptionally important, aside from being able to hear experiences and then taking time for that nurturing, for singing our songs, using our medicines for that healing, reconciliation is a different animal, and it's exceptionally challenging because it challenges our biases and our things that we carry with us, because it's not about making somebody else understand. So like the only way I can explain this is through a story. So we were asked to do a truth healing reconciliation community forum with a foster youth, and it was all boys age 13-ish to 17. And we had quite a few of it in attendance. We had probably about 20, 25-ish foster youth. We had people from the University of Duluth. The community members were there from the Duluth area, and altogether 60-ish people there. We broke into small groups doing what we do to get people to interact and have an experience there. And in my small group that I was to take care of, I didn't realize how I was still carrying this intense anger toward white social workers. And as we were sitting there, this young man I said, this is the point in our day where we ask our foster youth, what is one thing you want a social worker to know? And just that, because otherwise, you know, it takes a long time to hear just one thing even. So this young man told his experience of foster care age 2, and he was now 17. And all the things that happened to him, the physical abuse, the sexual molestations, being hungry, not being cared for. And he said, but the thing that hurt me the most was on my birthday, I'd ask whatever social worker I had, I'd say, can you please get my mom on the phone? I want to talk to my mom. And I was blown away that he just got through telling us all this violations that happened to him, but he needed his mom. That doesn't ever go away, ever, you know? And so meanwhile, there's this white-haired social worker here, and she starts crying. And I remember thinking, are you crying just because this sad story? You cry? I mean, I started getting mad. And I was like, oh, sure, now you're gonna cry. You probably, and all this stuff went on in my head, and I was like, oh my goodness. And I thought, put this aside, Sandy, just, you know, and so I was just kind of giving this circle a little time to absorb what, and then all of a sudden she looks up and goes, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I've done this. I've done this. She wasn't his worker. And I'm thinking, of course you did, because you probably looked at the mom as an addict and judged her and said he shouldn't talk to his mom when he's high, but she's high, or all the things that they think people shouldn't experience, but he needed to hear his mother's voice regardless. And she didn't have the maturity, she didn't have the training, she didn't have the understanding to honor that. That pissed me off. I was so mad. But that young man, after hearing that, and then she goes, I don't know what to do. Just don't know what to do. And she was breathing heavy and everything. And then he gets up and he just took a couple steps across that little circle, put his hand real lightly on her shoulder. He goes, well, now you know different. Stepped back and sat down. He had light years ahead of me. So reconciliation's about you, the individual, because people do want to heal. People do want to come together, and I've witnessed it. I saw it time and time and time again in our circles. And I've had people say, oh, she just stole all that time away. Those are just white people tears, blah, blah, blah. And I said, first, you were not there. Second, I witnessed it and I saw it. And someone else wrote about it in our evaluations, and someone else who witnessed it wrote about it in the evaluation and what it did to her as well. We have to give people that opportunity and time to self-reflect and offer that change. It was an amazing time, and it made me realize it always begins with us. It's not about someone else. It's how are we reacting to, responding to what we're hearing, and how do we facilitate that process and hold that process to be. Big lesson I learned that day. And I think that young man and that lady probably had 10 years of therapy, just like that, with each other. So you can establish new relationships that way once you know. You can evaluate, and then what are we going to do going forward? You have to have a plan to do something based on what you heard to move forward, or why'd you do it? All right, next. So basically just always said that, you know, it's just So I just wanted to reiterate, reconciliation is not an event. When you get to that point, like at the end of that day, reconciliation is going to begin at that, after that. Because then they're going to figure out, oh, okay, well, we heard this and that. What do we do to, is there anything we can do to address that? So it's not an event, it's a process, and that process could take, well, as long as it takes. As long as it takes. Next. So I learned that there's a real healing power in sharing. And I realized over the time of having social workers sit in our circles, that that grief affects everyone. You know, I can go on about what social workers are locked into and how they would like to do things differently and are unable to because of policies and timelines and all of that. But anyway, just it affects everyone. I mean, everyone deserves that time for healing, that reflection and healing. Next. So as I'm going along and I'm seeing all the similarities, and I thought to myself, why isn't anybody doing anything? And where do we go to find out what has happened as a collective? And I realized in 2012, this is all that existed in terms of research on the outcomes of Native adoptees. And one of them, Susan Harness, I put her in there, that hers was a master's thesis and it became a book. It was like out of everything, I felt like hers was the best, but you know, look at that, hardly anything. So I said, well, we have to have a study and we have to have more than 20 people interviewed. And we have to, because that seems to be the standard. I've interviewed 20 people and now I know. No, you don't know. You know, if this happened to 20 people, did it happen to a large group? So next, I formed a research team and we put it together a study and I said, let's put it out there. I want to hear from all adoptees, not just Native adoptees, because at some point we want to do some comparison. And these are the places that we put it out. Next. Our team, next. Oh, same one, next. So 336 people responded. They had been in foster care for at least 6 months and or were adopted, and they were of all races. This is our findings. We looked at 95, 129 actually said that they, out of the 336, said that they were Native, but we looked at 95 of them because 95 said that they had been reunited with their family. Okay, next. Mostly women. There's the incomes and college, and the average age was, hit it again, 50. Next. Well, here's our findings. So when I started sharing this at conferences, nobody wants to change anything. It pisses me off to no end. I had not had one policy person or anybody come up to me and say, well, you know, you found this out, got any ideas? No, and everyone just blinks and goes, oh my God. So I don't know what social work students are out there or people that are in policy or anything like that. We got to change this to something that is more helpful. We do not have to be removing children in general the way that they're removing children, because there isn't a focus at all on family preservation. I've put myth of safety because workers have to work toward safety and permanency here all the time. And I don't think there's any such thing as permanency either, because there's emotional permanency and physical permanency. And social work really misunderstands a child wanting to reunite with their parents as a failed adoption, as not health, that's another whole thing I don't have time for right now, but this is the reality of adoption right here. Okay, next. So here too, let's look at contemplated or planned suicide, 43 of the 95. And I understand that. I was never suicidal myself, but I understand that emotional isolation is an incredibly awful place to be if you don't see an out. Suicide looks very inviting. 20 of the 95 attempted and hit it again. And depression is off the charts. So it's hard to grow up into an adoptive home. First, if you're transracially adopted, you may be completely isolated from other races like yourself. I mean, I was the only brown girl in our school. I was the only brown girl in our town of 4,000 some people, and I lived 40 minutes away from a reservation. Yeah. So anyway, the emotional isolation is so intense. And in the beginning, when we started talking about frustration in adoption placements, I mean, I was basically told I was maladjusted. And I said, well, we know I'm maladjusted in many ways, but that's not what it is. It's growing up, and whether you're in the same race or not, you don't look like anyone, you don't talk like anyone. All your cousins get together and they have the same shaped toe as everybody else, because that's the physical and genetic phenomena that happen in families. And so we don't have a biological mirror at all. I was 40 years old before I was told I was like one of my relatives. I remember my uncles and I were talking at one time, and I'm pretty ADD and hyper all over the place. And I was just chatting, I was just going on and on. And finally, they just kind of looked at each other and started talking Indian. And I go, hey, what are you guys saying? And they go, oh, you just really remind us of your Aunt Gladys. And I'm like, I do? Because I hadn't met her yet. And they go, yeah. And I said, how? And they go, you're pretty spacey like she is. And and that was the first time someone in my family said I was like my family. Oh my God, I didn't care that it was spacey at all. I thought it was really cool that I had an aunt who was like me, finally someone like me. And we don't hear that, we don't see that, and that takes a huge toll on your development. You're feeling good about who you are, what you look like, and what you want to do with your appearance. So next. So this is our wordle, just the expressions that people had, and especially that called home piece makes me really think, now that I've been to so many ceremonies and stuff, there is a time where we pray with Choachage that acknowledges the generations that came before us, our ancestors, and we pray for that generation present and that generation yet to come. So ever since that we've had our ceremonies, those prayers have been said. So we were prayed for before we came down here, even from the behind the stars. And so we were called home. Our hearts needed to be there to become who we were meant to be. So when I started seeing that, I was like, oh, really deep spiritual reality here. Next. There's our citation. If you wanted to take a picture of it, it's just riveting reading, you guys. It's a paper, research paper. Blah, 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 blah. Next. So adoptees, I thought I wanted to just let you know, in general, of all races, are 4 times more likely to attempt suicide. And what really makes me angry about what's said here is this individual, who is the president of the National Council for Adoption, says it doesn't surprise me that children who've been adopted in great numbers have struggles, which I guess if you took it to its natural consequences would increase the suicide rate. But the thing that really comes out at me is it appears the vast majority of children are doing very well. So it doesn't matter that these kids attempted, because fewer kids attempted than didn't. The hell? How do you say that about children? So I shared this with the American Bar Association, and somebody took the screenshot and put it on that dude's Twitter page. I know. He said nothing. I don't know. That's pretty callous to me. Wouldn't be just any child wanting to kill themselves? Wouldn't you want to be looking at what's happening? One, they're most doing good, but that's what his job is too. Okay, next. So what about moms and dads, mothers? I mean, there's absolutely no study, not one done on Native American fathers. I don't think that there is anything done on fathers in general. But here's what we are finding is our preliminary findings for our birth mothers, which there's no study on them now, that will be the first ones. But it's the same kind, we mirror each other's pain. You know, they worry about us, think about us every birthday, feel guilty, feel shame, and have this loss as well, this ambiguous loss, because people will tell them, well, you did the right thing. You did the ultimate act of love. And I call BS. Why couldn't the ultimate act of love find a way for mom and baby to live together? Why is the adoption agency going to charge $60,000 to adopt a baby? Why couldn't they ask for help to help mom and baby stay together? Because the chances of that child wanting to kill themselves, we see that, right? I bet we're going to find that the attempted suicide is similar in our mothers as well. Next. Just more things of that loss, a lot of trauma. Mothers talking about 83-year-old woman says, I can still hear my child cry as they took her out of the room. And in that case, she was lied to and told that she couldn't have 2 children on welfare. So she needed to decide which child she wanted to give to adoption. I could tell you so many stories of present day 45-year-old girl, what she was so, oh my God, you guys, I don't know if you've heard about how adoption is really considered a billion-dollar business. We are the commodity, and the mothers are targeted that are afraid and don't have some of the resources, but they could easily be resolved. But they're not offering that. Next. Same thing. Guilt, shame, anxiety. Next. So this is just kind of a summation of what we learned listening to mothers. We're not told their rights, and they gave in. That's the part that really gets me, is they gave in because there was no other resource offered them. Next. So our study, not one county guardian ad litem or social worker or lawyer has used our study as a way to advocate that the family they find resources for a family. It's pissing me off year after year presenting nobody. It's like, oh, you go into, I've been a qualified expert witness. You take your stuff in, you here's and then here's what you, it's like, how hard is that? Well, anyway, Raquel, a friend of mine, messages me and says, Sandy, don't you have a study out there? And I go, yeah. Could you send it to me? And I did. And I didn't ask her what it was for. She didn't tell me. We were both busy. And then a couple weeks later, I get the notification that she used it in a Supreme Court decision to keep a family together in the state of Washington, which was like pretty amazing. So then I started saying, all right, community, if the Supreme Court in Washington thinks it's good enough, certainly we would do. And I thought, well, do we have to have maybe we need a workshop to show you how to do it. I don't know, we could do that too. But next. So then when Brackeen was being decided, I was part of amicus briefs and stuff with Sarah, who's going to be here. And I really thought it wasn't going to go through. I really did. I thought, man, we are screwed. It's done. It's over. And I was in the northern woods of Minnesota on my way to Big Drum ceremony. It was going to take a week of just being there. And I get a phone call and they said, as I'm in the woods, and they go, Sandy, you won't believe it. It was upheld. I'm like, what? No way. Yes, it was. Well, then right after I get the phone call, I get what you call it, text from the head of the American Bar Association. She goes, Sandy, they cited your study. And I went, no way. Who? Which one? Who did it? You know, and they said Gorsuch. I can never say his name. I said, really? I didn't think because I listened to the hearing with a bunch of other lawyers and stuff in DC, and they all sounded so negative about it. And I didn't think anyone had a grasp of ICWA, what it really, really was, and why it was necessary. And certainly not like anyone was going, wow, cool. Well, not that you'd say that, but you get the energy that they were, putting it together. And so he cited our 6th paper, I think, which is pretty amazing, So now I tell social workers, holy crap, if SCOTUS thinks that our research is sound, certainly you should be using it, right? It was pretty amazing that they used our paper. So I just said a prayer of gratitude, blessings back to those clerks that found us and that Gorsuch saw the wisdom in it. Pretty amazing. All right, next. All right. So adoption has really created a collective wound, right? A collective wound is a whole bunch of people over time, right? And we need a collective healing for that. But so bringing our people back together through that song I talked about and developing, we had a ceremony, or a ceremony was born out of that. So next. So this was 2018, but we started in 2007 working with the White Earth tribe. They came to us and said, we want to welcome our relatives back. So we started having like a 2-day forum and then bringing them home in ceremony at the powwows, and have the community comes out and shakes their hands and welcomes them. Next. And then my tribe said in 2015, let's do it too. So we've been doing it with my tribe as well. Next. And we're in our 17th year of doing it in Minneapolis. And just put that up there in case anybody wants to fly over to Minnesota on November 4th and witness it. It'd be awesome. Next, do it for research. Somebody's got to do research. This is just talking about when we were taken, the space in our community, space in our family, the space in our community has empty until we return there. But yet we, when we're coming back, are so fearful and apprehensive. It's hard to find, how do I do that? Can I do that? Should I do that? And so that's the part that begins to heal and this is one at our forum doing one of our initiatives that we do. Next. And healing's pretty simple. It's not a big, loud event. It's something that happens very quietly. Sometimes a grandma or an uncle or grandpa turns to you and just says something. And it's like, wow, that's what I needed to hear. Just very simple things. We are heal each other when we come together. Next. So adoption really does create a generational wound. And if we have to still have post-adoption services for those who are adopted, and it needs to be for a lifetime, because it isn't just one thing, and it's complicated, but we need to have it. Next. And I think that's going to be it. Oh, we got to find balance. There's 4 essential questions. Eventually, if you're ever talking to a spiritual person and you want direction, they're going to tell you, you have to answer these 4 essential questions in life. Who am I? Where do I come from? Well, think about an adoptee. I mean, I didn't even know what a reservation was. How would I know that? I don't know. So that's why it's so important that we have our Indian names, because that just even further describes us, who we are in the world and who we are in our community and who we are in our family. And because if you don't have those 2 basics, the next 2 things, you're just wandering around trying to figure it out of what am I doing and where am I going to go next. Ceremonies really do bring a healing that brings that innocence back in our heart, because that's lost during the trauma of separation. And then whatever happens post-separation, whatever abuse or traumas take place. And it gives us that sense of belonging, a pride and a dignity. Next. The Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition. I want to make sure we all have this. You can't talk about child welfare without talking about boarding school first, so the address is on there. We have a, next. We have a bill out right now at Truth and Justice Commission, where we're wanting the United States government to support us through a bill where we would have subpoena power to get records so that families can locate relatives, the descendants and families can do that. And so I have brought you all a card that is easy to follow to how you can support that bill. Next. So if you want to give yourself a history, these 3 books will do that for you. The Baby Thief is about how adoption was even developed. If you really want to get angry, that's a good book to read, man. It's called The Baby Thief. Georgia Tann was actually called a baby thief because of the way that she did adoption, normalized unscrupulous adoption practices. Then my book, and then there's another book called American Baby that tells the history from an individual's point of view of their experience of being in an unwed mother's home, which were very popular back in the day. So if you read those 3 books, you'd have a really good handle on adoption in the United States. I think that's it. All right. I just wanted to read to you the beginning of my book, so that so everything that I've shared in here kind of pretty much is in here, only explained and talked about in a little bit different way. But I'm just going to read to you the first page. Actually, my introduction or whatever it is, whatever it's called, who are you dedicating the book to? That's it. For Nina Lulu White Hawk Garnio, my Indian mother, the one who gave me life. This is also for our Indian mothers and fathers. It's for the mothers whose shame kept them from forgiveness of self, who carried the secret that they gave life, the most sacred gift of all. I forgot to say that. Many birth mothers' families do not know that they had a child that was taken from them. And I've talked to those mothers and witnessed those reunions as well. And could you imagine being 83 years old and not having told your family you have a sister, but shamed, as you know, because back in the day, there was deep shame about being an unwed mother. We long to hear your voice, feel your arms, and look into your eyes. Our path was this difficult path, a path that is guided in compassion. For the Indian fathers who were left out of the decision process, for the father who was not even told you had a child, this is for you. You can decide today to be part of the life you helped bring into the world. To our grandparents who were robbed of the opportunity to hold us and watch the future generations grow to maturity, we wanted your patience, missed your direction and wisdom. Most of all, we thank you for your prayers. So hear us wherever you are, our Indian mothers, fathers, and grandparents. Thank you for giving us life. Forgive yourself. Even if we came into this world in the worst of circumstances, we are not that circumstance. We are sacred when we were born, separate from the hardship that surrounded us. Our life is good and has a purpose. I pray for good health and happiness for all.